All right, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza podcast. We are here today after Inter travels to Bergamo to defeat Atalanta 1-0 in a very tough match. Everything was to play for here today, including getting back to top of the table. After Milan this morning, it was a 6:30 a.m. Eastern match. Shout outs to any Interisti who woke up to watch this match that early, but Milan dispatches pretty easily Verona 3-0. Then a couple hours later, we get Rasmus Højlund's brace against Cremonese to propel Milan and Napoli back above Inter in the race. So Inter had everything to play for, traveling to Atalanta, a team on the back of winning 6 out of their last 7, including a win against Chelsea in the Champions League. This week, we are joined with a very special guest, a guy that you have probably heard me mention a few times on here. He is the grandson of legendary Inter player, La Grande Inter player, Sandro Mazzola. Just joking, guys. He's not the grandson. Don't get this twisted. But Vince Mazzola is here today. How's it going, Vince? How you feeling after this big win for Inter?
Hey man, doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to breaking down today's win with you.
Yeah, and we can get started pretty much talking about lineups. And I know we talked about this beforehand. The lineups, what was Kivu going to do in this match? We had 8 days rest after that Supercopa match. Was there going to be any changes? And I think Kivu went with pretty much the strongest lineup that was available to him, considering the injuries of Boni, considering the injuries of Acerbi. Um, Kivu starts a lineup with Jan Sommer in goal. We have Bisek at right center back, Akanji and Bastoni. Luis Enrique retains that right wing back spot. Barella, Çalhanoğlu, Zielinski, and Di Marco across the rest of that midfield five. And then Tula, Marcus Thuram, and Lautaro Martinez up top. Vince, I know you're not the biggest Jan Sommer fan. We've had an up and down season with him. You know where I stand with Jan Sommer. But Pep Martinez this week, or last week in the Supercopa, gave Kivu kind of a dilemma here going into this big match. And what did you think before the match? Was it something when you saw Jan Sommer in goal, you were a little upset, or do you think that Pep Martinez hadn't done enough to usurp Sommer in that starting lineup?
So I'd say the goalkeeper position was really the one question mark we probably had today. Um, Obviously, for the fairly limited funds we have available, a couple summers back we spent 15 million on Pepo Martinez, and for the most part, we really don't know what we have. At some point, we need to start seeing that, and from what we have seen, I think we've seen a really solid shot stopper who maybe needs to work on some distribution. So I would like to see more of him, and I know, like you said, I've gotten a bit on Jan Sommer's case for what probably hasn't been a strong start to the season for him. So when I saw that particular decision today, my reaction was, all right, let's see what happens with it. But to his credit, I feel like there were a couple moments where he came up pretty big today. So while I have been critical of him, I don't really have any complaint about his performance today. I thought he came through it really big for us.
Yeah, you know where I stand with Jan Sommer. I'm probably Vince and I are in a group message with 4 or 5 other big Inter fans, and I'm the lone ranger in that group that has kept with Jan Sommer throughout the season. I wouldn't say I'm like a huge Jan Sommer supporter, but I mean, we're still top of the league. If you look now with our defensive record, despite some blunders and everything, let me see, clean sheet. Only Milan, Napoli, Roma, Como, and Lazio have conceded less than us so far. So we've had some matches where, we've had some big match or some blunders, specifically that Juventus match where we gave up four. I mean, when was the last time you've seen Inter give up 4 goals? And despite that, we're still defensively not that far off. I think it's only 1 or 2 goals difference between us. I think Lazio is the only one they have like 10 goals conceded. So that's 4 goals difference. I think we have 14. So the doom and gloom that we're hearing from all these Interisti everywhere, despite all of that, we're still top of the league with a Jan Zomer in goal. So I do agree with you that Joseph Martinez needs to get some more playing time because, like you said, we spent 15 million on this player and we still don't really know what we have. But with Christian Kivu, you got to think he's thinking, you know, I'm top of the league. If I make a change now and shit hits the fan and we start going back, A, can I bring Jan Zomer back in? Like, goalkeeping is all about confidence a lot of the time. So, if I take him out, bench him for Pep Martinez, and then Martinez starts shitting the fan and we start going back, can you bring in a Jan Zomer in goal? And then, yeah, why make the change if we're top of the league? So, I don't know how I know how you feel about it, but do you think Kivu, do you think he should stick with that kind of Coppa Italia? Maybe even we got 2 matches left in the Champions League. Do you think maybe he should see what we have with Pep Martinez in these matches against Arsenal and Dortmund coming up?
It couldn't hurt. I certainly think we need more rotation. We have to remember that Jan Sommer was brought in on a brilliant piece of business, but to be a 1 or 2 year stopgap or so, and now we're going on in year 3 here, we've started seeing a slippage. So at some point we have to do something about the position because he's not getting any younger. And at his age, considering he is a fairly smaller keeper in terms of stature, if those reactions start to slip, if he's starting to show indecision, hesitation, that's a big problem. And that's something where I would lean towards putting in Pep Martinez. But at the same time, to your point, there is that question of confidence. And Summer has come through for us in some big moments over the years that he's been here. And even today, I thought he had a couple good saves. There was one moment early where he came out of net to make a sweep to kind of take care of one early chance that Atalanta had. There was a one-on-one late where he made a stop. After that, Atalanta scored a goal that got ruled off sides, but I don't think Sommer was responsible for that. So I'd say what I'd like to see going forward is more rotation. I'd like to see both guys a little bit, have maybe an open competition, have them push each other to try and show what they got.
Yeah, I agree. And it was a match, we ended with a clean sheet. So Jan Zomer definitely did his job in goal. And, mid or last week in the Super Copa, Pep Martinez came up big in the penalty shot or shootout and, with that last save on Fabian. So I think it's a good problem that Kivu has. Who do I play? Both these guys, Jan Zomer started off, the Milan match, people put on him, the Juve match, people put on him, but he's kind of playing his way back into form slowly. And then you have Pep Martinez, who is fighting for that spot and having competition. That's going to push players to give their best. That was one thing I complained about last season with the strikers was, behind Lautaro and Thuram, they knew that it didn't matter what they did. They were going to be the first choice strikers. And having a little bit of competition, look, it's brought out maybe the best of Lautaro, who's certainly a player on form. So maybe having this competition between these two keepers, getting Pep Martinez some more playing time could do us wonders in this last half of the season. But getting back to the Atalanta match, it was a first half, the first 10 to 15 minutes. Inter had a chance on a set piece off of a corner from Akanji. And then in the 17th minute, we had a beautiful ball over the top from Di Marco to Barel or Bastoni. It was one of those, we've seen a million times from this team under Conte, under Inzaghi, and now under Kivu, us hitting those balls over the top and finding a player, whether it's Bastoni or Barella, catching the defense off guard because these players are making runs from deep from our midfield or even defense in Bastoni's term. But other than that, it was a very, very stale first 15 to 20 minutes. And it's a script we've seen plenty of times from Inter where we dominate early in the matches and then don't capitalize on chances and let another team get back into the match. So what were your thoughts and were you feeling kind of nervous after those first 15, 20 minutes where we hadn't converted our chances and were you like, oh God, this is just another Inter match that we've seen a million times in the past 12 to 18 months?
So by about the 20-minute mark, I was definitely getting that feeling. Like you said, it was a clear stalemate early while both sides kind of figured each other out. Early early-ish on, we started to take over a little bit, and we started getting some chances that weren't quite working out. I noticed we were trying a lot of long balls over the top to Taram early that didn't seem to be working, but eventually we found there was a couple opportunities, like you'd mentioned. There was one where, looking at my notes here, DeMarco sent a cross or a pass over to Barella, who kind of whiffed on it. Um, there was one moment I know we both had mentioned in the group chat where we both said, Taram, just shoot the ball. And then minutes later, he actually did. It was a pretty good shot on. It just was saved. Um, I know Lautaro had a 1v1 where he didn't quite strike it right with his weak foot. That didn't quite work out. Then Taram finally got the goal, it looked like, which was then ruled offside. So that was unfortunate, but there was that offside in the build-up with Lautaro. Um, and I don't know if this is a good time to talk about this, but something I've kind of noticed about Taram over the last few years in general, his shot selection really confuses me sometimes. 1 minute he'll be taking on his man and he'll put a banger into the top corner past Magnan, and then the next minute he'll find himself in a one-on-one and he'll cut back and try and find somebody in midfield who's coming to be the cavalry, to someone who's trying to provide reinforcements. I really don't He's quality. I'm not sure what he's doing sometimes up front.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you can even see it. I believe it was either in the last match against Bologna in the Supercoppa or the Genoa match. There was a moment where it was a 1-2 with him and Lautaro Martinez. And he tried to do the little slick, 1-2 back when really there was no defender around him. He could have taken a touch. He's in the opposition's box. He could have taken a touch and had a strike on goal. And he tried to do the 1-2 for Lautaro, and I think whoever the defender was, I can't remember if it was Genoa or Bologna, they ended up clearing it out. But it really was a chance where if he really just takes a touch and has a strike on goal, it's probably going to be a goal because he was left all alone. And maybe because when we bought Turam, he was initially considered, a winger, and then I think he tore his ACL, and then from that, Mönchengladbach, they moved him into that striker position, and maybe he must have grown up in that winger position, and he just doesn't have that striker's instinct. Maybe that's why the shot selection sometimes is baffling. And I agree with you. I think it's time we take a look at Turam and see because Boni this season has really given us no reason to doubt that he's the player of the future. And the comparisons coming in is he's Turam plus. And so far this season, he has convinced us that he is Turam plus. He offers a lot, and it seems like the big criticism of Boni coming into the season was he doesn't put away chances. But so far, he hasn't really given us a reason to think he can't put away chances. So I agree with you, Turam. Like you said, that one opportunity, it was literally within what 2 minutes of each other. He's driving at the defense, and it's like just shoot it, just shoot it, just shoot it, and he tries a little pass that I think to Luis Enrique or Barella that didn't really come off, and then somehow it finds its way back around to him, and he puts a shot on goal that the keeper for Atalanta had to make a pretty good save with. And it's like, why didn't you do that 2 minutes ago? Like you could have maybe given him something more to think about. And it is frustrating to see Turam. It's interesting, we have a striker that doesn't know when to shoot in Turam, and then we have a striker in Lautaro who shoots any opportunity he can get. Granted, though, a lot of the times it doesn't really come off. So we're in a conundrum there. It sounds like, but like you mentioned earlier, the goal that they had called off, it was a brilliant goal. I think it was one back in the midfield by Barella, or maybe even Çalhanoğlu, one of the two. I think it actually was Çalhanoğlu. A really simple pass to Zelensky, who fed through to Lautaro, and then a brilliant through ball. It was that Turam Lautaro connection that we really haven't seen much in the last 18 months. A lot of times they seem disjointed when on the pitch together, and Turam dispatched it. It was a great finish by him. Lo and behold, it comes back and offsides. Lautaro just a step offsides.
The
But
funny thing
again,
about
this chance. Go ahead.
the funny thing about that chance is I thought he actually should have passed it to Çalhanoğlu, who had a more open. I thought Taram should have passed it down to Çalhanoğlu, who was running into screen. I thought he had a shows what I know because Turam, he made the shot. He did what he had to. And I
Yeah,
was like, okay, all right,
yeah.
maybe he does know something about shot selection. But
Yeah.
yeah,
But again, it's another opportunity though for Inter that we thought that we had a goal and it comes back and it's that script every time that we see, and it's what everyone's been complaining and lamenting about for the past really since the Supercoppa final loss to Milan. It's this team, whenever stuff doesn't go their way, how will they respond? And after that chance, I literally wrote down, how will this team respond to getting a goal taken off? A brilliant goal, like one of those goals that it was a really, really good goal. How do you respond? Because a team can get knocked back easily from something like this. So how were they going to respond? And we had our answer pretty shortly after. It seemed like Atalanta with a big chance. I think it was Zalewski who cut in on his right foot from that left side, swung in across to Scamacca and inches away from Atalanta, going up 1-0 right before the half. And if Atalanta, if that would have connected or something, I don't think Jan Sommer was going to make the save. And I think Atalanta has all the momentum at home going into the half that, and that would have been a thing that we've seen from Inter, like a punch to the face, and we don't have any response. Luckily, that didn't go in, and we go into the half 0-0 level. And some things I thought at half, like I said, it was the same old script, dominant, but zero goals. We've seen millions of times. I thought we needed to get our wingbacks in because like Pasalic was pressing Çalhanoğlu so hard, and we weren't getting any influence on the match from Çalhanoğlu. So it was, in my opinion, Atalanta was kind of cluttering that middle of the field, trying to press and make it tough for us to build up through the middle of the field. And I think, with how bad, in my opinion, Barella played in the first half, we needed to get the wingbacks, Luis Enrique, however you pronounce it, and DiMarco to get more involved. And in my opinion, in the first half, Bastoni and Barella were absolutely terrible. I don't know how you felt. And honestly, throughout the whole match, we can continue this to a whole match conversation, despite we have a little bit more to talk about. But Bastoni and Barella, that's two back-to-back matches following the Supercopa where they had the two worst penalties, or sorry, Boni had a terrible penalty, but Bastoni Barella, two pretty bad penalties, and then this performance, this whole match performance, Bastoni and Barella. Is it time to be concerned maybe with Bastoni and Barella, the two Italians?
a little bit. And while we're on the subject, I'd even add in that I thought DeMarco had a pretty quiet game. Um, we saw he got subbed off eventually for Carlos, who, put in a pretty solid shift defensively to help close things down. But I definitely agree that Bastoni's season so far has been a little concerning, especially compared to last year, where he was probably our most consistent contributor all year long. And Barella today was honestly a horror show from him. I thought there was at least one chance where he should have just shot the ball. I thought, and or maybe I'm thinking of Thuram. No, Barella, what he did, he missed. He totally whiffed on that one Bastoni cross in. But then also there was the late moment where Luis Enrique made the run, tried to beat the keeper, didn't do it, sent it over to Barella, who just completely missed.
It was
And
absolutely terrible.
yeah,
That goal was wide open at that point.
and something with Barella is you see, he's class, great having him on the field when he's in great form, but there are moments where you can tell he's maybe a little arrogant. Things where he tries to get too cute with the play, he complains to the officials a little too much. Sometimes you'd like to see him just lock in and be more of a leader. We trust him to be our vice captain usually, but it's moments like today where it's hard to watch. You just look at him and you say, "What are you doing, man?" We were. I know neither of us have been huge fans of Mkhitaryan for the past year or two, but it was to the point where we were begging Mkhitaryan to come in to sub in and replace Barella for the day. I think that's a testament to the kind of performance that he had out there, which is unfortunate. But
Yeah, and it's I think Barella is a little more safe, in my opinion, than Bastoni currently because Barella, we've seen some really great, even more recently against, I think it was Genoa. His first half performance against Genoa, he was practically unplayable in that match. And he has that ability, but it's the consistency this season from Barella. He follows up that match against Genoa with this match in the league, and he was giving the ball away up way too easily there in the midfield. But it was kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde performance because he had some turns in the. I mean, he drew the foul from Kolasinac in the first half with a brilliant Zidane-esque kind of elastico turn. He did it again in the second half, a brilliant turn, and he has bits of quality. But then it's like a simple pass or something like that doesn't come astray. That I feel like when that happens early, he's such an emotional player. He's got that Italian emotion, that Sardinian maybe emotion that comes out. And I think maybe sometimes that throws him off because if a couple passes don't go his way early in the match, you can see him the rest of the match, all the hand gestures and everything. And it's not good for him and it's not good for the rest of the team, in my opinion. And a good Barella in the midfield, there's no other midfielder as much as I love Zelensky, as much as I love Çalhanoğlu. Barella offers so much to this squad that can change a match. And I think we need to get him. Kivu's, people are praising Kivu for his work for this side mentally. Maybe we need to see him do some work with Barella. But then Bastoni, man, I don't know what we have to do with Bastoni. This is now like the fifth or sixth match in a row where, for me, Bastoni has been maybe the worst defender on the pitch. Albeit a soft penalty, he gave up the penalty against Liverpool. There was a couple errors against Pisa and Genoa. Maybe you can blame him and Akanji for that little mix-up that led to Vitinha's goal. And then, other than that brilliant run against Bologna in the Supercoppa, his play in the rest of that match was not that great. And then it, concluded with that piss poor penalty that he took and the thing. So for me, Bastoni is the one that I'm really worried about. And there's links for him, with Barcelona, him liking their Instagram post. Before the Supercopa, they asked him if he was going to stay at Inter. He said probably yes. There was a pause in between there. Like, it's not looking good for Bastoni right now at Inter. And I think the fans are starting to, I don't want to say turn on him, but kind of notice the deficiencies he has. Um, and maybe it's something we need to see Carlos Augusto for a little run of games coming up in this left center back position. Do you think that's something that do you think it's a decision Kivu has to make, or do you think it's really not a big deal with Bastoni?
I don't think we're there quite yet. Maybe that's just me defending my guy. You know that I've been a Bastoni fan for quite some time, but it is something to watch. I do think we're at a bit of a yellow flag point, and I'm not totally sure what the problem is. I look at it similar to how I look at things with Marcus Thuram right now, where clearly both guys are not on peak form. You look at Bastoni last year, all year long, probably our most consistent player, while there were other guys at various points that were maybe had a higher peak. DeMarco early in the season, Thuram early, then Dumfries after his renewal in January. I think all season long, Bastoni was the best guy on the team in terms of availability, performance, everything. And there's been a clear drop off this season, as there has been with Thuram from years past. And I think it's one of three things, maybe some combination. Either there's some injury that we don't know about that these guys are nursing. It could be an accumulation of all the miles, kilometers, whatever unit of measurement you'd like to use. The fact is, we depend on these guys heavily. We have not had a lot of depth at their respective positions in these past couple of years. And that means that with all the competitions we play, we throw them out there again and again and again. And sooner or later, that adds up, especially when you also count international duty. And we're coming up on a World Cup year. We just had the Club World Cup. These guys play a lot. And I don't know if it's things catching up to them or, what I hope it's not, is mentality. Are these guys checked out for one reason or another? You hope it's not that, and we're not in the locker room, so it's hard for us to say that about players in some cases, but when you can tell that there's a drop in form like this, it certainly raises some yellow flags, things to look at and maybe consider going forward. I don't think we're at the point where we need to panic, but I'd say let's see what happens after this January, February stretch. And if it continues, then maybe we need to make some hard decisions.
Yeah, I agree. It's again same with Jan Sommer, kind of the same dilemma. Like we're still top of the league, and if these are our issues and we're still top of the league, just imagine if we get these figured out. Just imagine if these players click, then the rest of the league should be worried for sure. Real quick before we talk about the second half, did you think there were any subs that needed to be made at halftime? Looking back,
So one of the notes I actually took during the game, probably about midway through the first half, was that I'm not sure what sub would change this. I did feel like the solution was probably on the field. Again, I do think we got the lineup pretty right today. Zielinski, I think especially, was had a phenomenal game, total masterclass. One of the two, him or Lautaro, I'd say were the clear man of the match. But as far as a sub that would maybe change the game,
just
considering he
based
was a
off at halftime,
I think
like
getting PO in at a certain point is something I would have liked to see, and that paid off. We'll get into that in a little bit, I'm sure. Um,
yeah.
Andy Doof on the wing, I thought about, but I did think that for the most part, the solution was going to be on the field.
Yeah, I agree. One thing interesting I kind of noticed, and I kind of liked it. I don't know if it was really a tactic or not, but it was on the opposite side. Palladino, he made the sub at halftime, giving his team three more substitution windows in the second half. If you make a sub at halftime, that doesn't take one of your substitution windows away from you in the second half. And I really like that because Atalanta really hadn't done much in the match. And I thought it was a really progressive, proactive thing by Palladino. He's a manager that, is one to maybe keep an eye on. Atalanta, despite under Gasperini, the heights they hit is still not, a big club in Italy. They are kind of in the conversation now, but they're kind of at a crossroads. They'll probably not finish within the top four this year. So Palladino is a manager that's going to be getting talked about depending on how the last 6 months of the season goes. Maybe getting a big because Spalletti might not be at Juve after this season, depending on how they finish. You know how Conte is at Napoli. You never know how that's going to be. So seeing this from Palladino is very interesting. Didn't really pay off, but he gave his team an opportunity that he could tweak something depending on what Kivu did with that change at half. So keep an eye on Palladino. He's a name that I think in the summer will get talked about a lot, especially depending on what happens at Juventus or Napoli, or you could even see Italiano going somewhere else, so maybe Bologna. He's going to be a name that I think is a really hot ticket this summer. So second half, we started off not great. It was an Inter that came out kind of on the flat foot, it looked like, and Atalanta get a goal uh, early on. Luckily, it gets called back for offsides. I think it was I don't remember who the Atalanta player was that straight offsides. Maybe it was Zalewski, right? Because how poetic would it have been if Zalewski would have scored against Inter? Jan Zomer came off. I think you mentioned this earlier. Came off his line really well to stop Zalewski from scoring. It made its way around, and Atalanta De Ketelare, I think, or maybe it was Scamacca that ended up shooting it. It was a very tame goal. Might have taken a deflection, found its way. But at that point, I was kind of shitting bricks because I was like, oh God, Inter were away. Atalanta came out as the attacking threat in the second half. And this is not the response we want to see coming out of halftime from Inter. Um, but Inter made a switch in about the 63rd or 64th minute. It was up until this point, it had kind of been a back and forth battle, but the switch was one that I think was the biggest moment of the match, and that was Kivu bringing on Pio for Turam. From that point on, I think the match switched back into Inter's favor. The pendulum swung back to us, and we didn't have to wait long for that goal. I was actually it was a Atalanta throw in. I think they were subbing on this throw in too. So I was like, oh, I have an opportunity to go pee. So I went to go pee, and I'm sitting there in the bathroom, and I hear the announcer going crazy. So from my mindset, I'm like, oh shit, Atalanta had to throw in. They went down and scored off of this, and I'm livid. And I come back in the living room, and I see all of us celebrating, and I see eventually what happened. Vince, take me through your thoughts whenever Kivu brought on Pio, and what you thought about Pio, and then our man Lautaro, the man on form. Give me your thoughts on that sub, and then Lautaro.
So I thought it was a good sub. Like I mentioned, I do think Kivu got the lineup right from the outset today. Uh, so I really didn't think that there were too many subs that would have made things a lot better. Pio would have been one of them because I did feel like, he has a lot to offer. He's hungry. He's trying to prove himself. He's young, and his physicality, his hold up play offers a lot. Clearly, things paid off immediately. His first touch, he got an assist over to Lautaro, who scored a great goal. I do think we were a bit lucky today. That goal was born off of a mistake that Atalanta made, and we also had they had two goals they scored that were ruled offside. And then this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but later on, Samardzic had that one miss that, that's another guy that it would have been poetic if he was the one to burn us. But sometimes that's how it goes. You need to take the luck when you get it. I know, especially, this team has been dreadfully unlucky in so many ways for the past year or so. I mean, how many times have we hit the post, the crossbar? How many times have we had sketchy calls go against us? So sometimes you need to make your own luck a little bit and take advantage of what you're given. Fortunately, we did that, and because of that, it's hard for me to say anything bad about the PO sub. I liked it when I saw it, and it paid off right away.
Yeah, and even some through balls Pio did later on in the match, some hold up play. I think I had mentioned this a couple of times on the podcast, and I think I mentioned it whenever it was a halftime today in the group message. I like seeing Pio come on in that 65th to 70th minute against that opposition defense that's tired. They've been battling with Lautaro Turam. And then just imagine if you're Jim City or Hien or anybody, any defender in Serie A that you've been battling with two really class forwards, Turam and Lautaro. Then you look over and you see this guy about to come in and sub in for one of the people, Pio Esposito. Like that's got to be a nightmare for any defender to have to be like, all right, I've already worked my ass off for this long, and then now I'm going to have to battle this 19, 20-year-old kid who's definitely been in the weight room, probably stronger than anybody else on the pitch, cocky. Like the mindset of the defense has got to be startling. And I mean, I'm not saying this is what's happened because Jim City had a pretty terrible match, which is kind of funny because he was the one battling for fitness to make it into the back line for Atalanta. But maybe Jim City sees that. He sees Pio come on and he's like, shit, and he's nervous. He doesn't know what to do. And that leads to the error. I don't know. But you mentioned luck. And you know, luck is a huge thing when you're battling for a scudetto. And if you look last season, like you said, how many times did the luck not go our way? Whether it was, a penalty that didn't get called on a foul from Pavlovic on Turam, or Bisek getting manhandled by Ndika in the box against Roma, or how many times did we hit the bar against Milan at the end of that match where we drew level that last gap? Like luck is huge, especially look at that Seconda Stella season. Verona, Fratesi scores, gets his pants pulled down. We get a penalty called against us and we save it. The only penalty Jan Zomer's ever saved in his career, maybe. Who knows? Sometimes you need that luck to push on for a Scudetto. So I think yes, maybe it was luck, but two things can be true at the same time. I think Inter did also deserve the 3 points. The goal was lucky, you could say, But in the first half, we battled and dominated and got a good goal that was called back offsides. And then the second half, after that first 10 or 15 minutes, there was a period when Pio came on for 10 or 15 minutes before we shut up shop, where I think Inter was the dominant team in this match again. So, yes, I think we were lucky, but I think that we deserved all 3 points here. And then, in typical Pazza Inter fashion, I think whenever I invited you on here, I should have known after the match we went and saw in Milan in March how that one turned out. Typical Pazza Inter game that we went and saw that, we were going to have a Pazza finish to this. Um, he makes changes, Kivu. He makes changes. He brings on Mkhitaryan for Barella, which I think was a good sub. Augusto for Di Marco, I also think was a good sub. But then to shut up shop, he brings on Andy Doof for Lautaro, and he brings on Davide Fritesi for Zielinski, who had came up with cramps, and moved us into a 5-4-1. Now, I don't know how you feel about these subs. It kind of worried me a little bit that to close up shop, you bring on Andy Doof and Fratesi, two guys not really known for defending or anything like that. What were your thoughts on those last two subs from Kivu?
I did think the last two were a bit unusual. Some of that had to do with availability, of course. I know midfield was stretched pretty thin. Zielinski clearly pulled up with cramps. Çalhanoğlu's gassed. Um, Fratesi, he's always been more of an attacking type midfielder. I did think bringing him in was certainly a decision. Andy Doof as well. I didn't quite get that. The subs before that I thought were great. I know we've both been critical of Mkhitaryan before, but one of the things that I feel he does still offer and offers quite well is his ability to help close out games because he clearly has defensive work rate and he showed that pretty well today. Um, my problems with him come more when it comes to going forward, which at that point in the game he doesn't really have to do. But I don't know. I think I had put in the chat too that it would have been nice to maybe see some more actual defenders. Maybe throw De Vrij on there to help bolster the defense. Think just whatever it would take to not give away yet another late goal.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a long way of saying that, yeah, I thought those were some unusual choices. I would have thrown some other guys out there.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking at what available options he would have had at this moment, and really the only people available besides Primavera players, Diouf, Fratesi, would have been De Vrij or Sucic. Again, Sucic in the midfield, not really someone you want to have in there to close up games. De Vrij, though, maybe that's something I don't understand after his good performance, in my opinion, against Bologna. De Vrij coming in would have maybe made a little more sense than maybe Diouf there. But it was scary because he brought these guys on in like the 82nd minute. And then literally 5 minutes later, in the 87th minute, that you alluded to earlier about Lazar Samartic, the chance came. And it came on that left side where Fratesi kind of came in. Carlos Augusto kind of was on. And they kind of seemed lost. Mkhitaryan, I think maybe was over there as well. They seemed lost. And Akanji didn't do well enough to deal with Skamaka there and who laid the ball through. I think the CDK, De Ketelare, who found Samardzic. And it was one that I know every Interisti was there. The buttholes, you couldn't have fit a penny in there with how tight it was. Not even a little pea, because that moment it looked like it was the equalizer. I don't know what Samardzic did to not have that go in the back of the net. But again, like you said, Inter was lucky, and maybe this is the luck that we need. Um, and yeah, I think Kivu, if that goal goes in, then yeah, maybe we do point the fingers after this match at Kivu because it was Fratesi, it was Carlos Augusto on that left side that completely lost the plot and led to that big opportunity. But luckily, Inter comes away with all 3 points. Before we get into final match thoughts, I did think in the last in extra time there was two chances, Fratesi and Andy Doof, to just close out the match. You're dribbling with the ball, Fratesi and Doof, and instead of going to the corner away from the middle of the field, both of them choose to go into the middle field. And I don't know why the rest of the team is joining in the attack. There was also Çalhanoğlu had an opportunity. He was actually dribbling to the corner and tried to whip in a ball into the middle of the box. And I want to say maybe Pio did the same thing, kind of in the corner over there. Like, just kill off the match. Go to the corner. Do something to kill off this match because Diouf and Fratesi losing the ball in the middle of the field, that's a midfielder there that's not back helping us to defend the lead. We're down a man now because they've lost the ball with Atalanta attacking forward in the final minutes. So I didn't really like that from those two, but luckily we didn't have to worry about it. Inter comes through, 3 points, moving top of the league, and then yet again another clean sheet. So the big question, final match: who is your man of the match and why?
I think it has to be, for me, I think it would have to be Zelensky with Lautaro as a very close second. Like you have mentioned, I believe you mentioned it in the group chat too. Çalhanoğlu was pressed a little bit and couldn't step up in the way that we usually like him to, and Barella had a pretty dreadful game. And in a three-man midfield, where does that leave us? Fortunately, Zelensky was up to carry us pretty well. Um, it's a treat to watch him with the ball every time. It really is, and I feel like he was carrying, his two counterparts on his back today, linking up well with Lautaro, who, his link-up play, great today. Effort never in question. He had that one poor 1v1 shot, but other than that, POC's done the one chance, fed it to Lautaro, and there was no hesitation. He put it home. He scored the only goal of the match, so those two I think carried us pretty heavily today, despite some performances from some other guys who weren't so great.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could choose either one. You could put their names in a hat and choose, and I wouldn't argue with either one. I think Serie A went with Lautaro as man of the match. They usually give that anybody that scores a goal, they'll usually give them the man of the match. But I agree. I think Zelensky had an absolute wonderful match, and he's like you said, he's a delight to watch on the ball. So there's some situations, especially in our defensive third, where I'm like, "What are you doing? Why are you dribbling there?" And somehow he just gets his way out of it. He had a brilliant nutmeg late into the second half on Darun, and just really tidy on the ball. And I've been saying this whole season, leaking into the back half of last season before he got injured. He offers something different in our midfield that no one else in the midfield, Barella, that industrious box to box midfielder that's going to work his socks off, give you a couple good balls over the top, but you're really looking at his work rate, his engine. That's what he offers. Çalhanoğlu, the sprays over the top and everything like that. But Zelensky, he dribbling wise can get out of tight situations. Passing wise, I've mentioned this a couple of times. He's always looking for something different, and I think that's refreshing because we've gotten used to Mkhitaryan, Çalhanoğlu, Barella in that midfield for 2.5, 3 seasons, and it grew stale. We knew exactly what passes they were going to make, and I think the opposition knew exactly what passes they were going to make. So seeing Zielinski in this midfield, and I think I hate when he plays in that regista role. It really annoys me because we don't see him closer to goal. Um, I think too, even today, like there was a lot of opportunity. I think it's like, man, we need to get Zielinski closer to goal, but he still really dictated the match. I think he was kind of fluid. He popped up a couple times on the right side, even when Barella was in. When Mkhitaryan came on, he moved to the right side of midfield. He's just so fluid in there, and I think a lot of people have said over the last couple of weeks, this is a huge signing for Inter. Even though the signing happened 2 seasons ago, we didn't see the Zielinski from last year that we thought we were going to get, and we've gotten it this year. And that's been the difference for me this season has been Zielinski. I mean, you look, it's ultimately the same squad we're playing under Kivu as we did under Inzaghi, but Zielinski, he peppers in a little bit, Salt Bay, peppers in a little creativity, a little something, a little panache there that no one else in our team, our squad really has, and it's really refreshing to see. But I would be remiss if I did not mention somebody else. I don't think he was man of the match, but I think in the second half he was really great. He grew into the game. I'll give you two names, but we'll start with this match. He's one that everyone's hated on up until the last couple weeks. But Luis Enrique had a absolutely great second half, in my opinion. I think it was the first half that we saw the same old, the status quo. He was afraid to give anything away. And so it was kind of a very subpar, or not subpar, but a subdued performance in the first half. But in the second half, the confidence grew even enough late into the second half. There was a little bit of Joga Benito, a little samba flair down there in the corner where he took his man on a couple times and got the best of him. And that was really good to see. And then I think Jan Bisek, he followed up that disappointment against Bologna, and he had a really, it was quiet, maybe you could say, but a very, very solid performance there at right center back to kind of stake his name as a starter, in my opinion, moving forward. Other than that blunder against Bologna, I think Bisek had a really solid match. I don't know if you want to add anything on Luis Enrique or Jan Bisek.
I think I would agree with what you said that they both had probably more pronounced second halves. I know one of the subs I was thinking about at halftime was Andy Doof possibly on that wing for Luis Enrique. Um, but I think a theme with him this season has been patience, and I think you've had more for him than our friend Corey and I have had. I know a few weeks ago we were both saying some not so great things about Luis Enrique, but you know a few weeks have gone on. He's gotten a little more action on that wing. He's integrating a little better. We're seeing a little bit more of what he can do, and I feel like that today was maybe a an example of that. Having that patience, letting him grow into the game, letting him grow into things, and show what he can do. So I think I'd agree with that. Bisek, I think, had a good game too. Um, I know we've experimented a bit with that back line where we like to have him or Akanji. Personally, I like Akanji in the middle. I know that when we brought him in, that was my hope on where we would use him because that allows Bisek to come forward. You know, considering what we've seen from him when he's on the ball, it feels a waste to just keep him back anchoring the middle of the defense, even if his height, his physicality is good for that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, I thought he locked down that right side pretty well today. Um, I mean, we kept a clean sheet considering what we've seen from this team the past year or so. It's you take that when you can get it from this group.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Clean sheet away at Bergamo, a team Atalanta. Everyone talks about how many goals they can create and score. So yeah, you're right. Clean sheet doesn't matter how you get it. It's a clean sheet and a victory. So moving forward, Inter next week, I don't know if we travel, but we play against Bologna, so a chance to kind of seek revenge in that Supercopa defeat that we had against Bologna. It looks like we play them at the Miazza, so it'll be at home at the San Siro, a big, big game for Inter again against Bologna. Napoli play against Lazio. So a decent test for Napoli. Lazio, a team that doesn't concede goals, don't really score many goals, but don't concede goals. Could be a big test for Napoli. And then Milan, the other contender for us in that top spot. They play Cagliari, who, in my opinion, again, another team that they're not really too big of a pushover. They're not going to battle for top four or top seven. But I think Cagliari this season has done enough to show that they're not a pushover either. So Inter against Bologna, again, another huge match for everything to play for. But we are top of the league with these 3 points against Atalanta, so can't really complain. Before we go away, though, Vince, I got a couple questions for you to wrap this up. We're going to do a game of Winner Stays On, the ever popular Instagram, TikTok game, whatever you want to say that everyone plays. And then we'll follow up with one penultimate or one ultimate question at the end of this. But this Winner Stays On is going to be an Inter midfield edition. And this is going to be an Inter midfield questionnaire from 2005, 2006 onward. So the last 20 years or so. Me and Vince are pretty young studs. We're not old heads. So if I would have brought in some players from the La Grande Inter or the 80s, we probably wouldn't have been able to give a true assessment of these players. So we're keeping it relevant here. So Vince, to start off, winner stays on, Inter midfield edition. Patrick Vieira or Freddie Guarin?
Vieira.
Stefano Cinci or Patrick Vieira?
Vieira. Oh, what could have been.
Patrick Vieira or Hakan Çalhanoğlu?
Oh, you know I'm a Çalhanoğlu fan. Uh,
To make it easier, we can say this is just Inter. You don't have to look at Vieira's whole career. We can look at just
right.
what he did at Inter.
Just Inter. I'm gonna give it to Çalhanoğlu. He was on the second star team. That takes him over the top for me.
Hakan Çalhanoğlu or Mateo Kovacic?
Çalhanoğlu. Kovacic wasn't here long enough.
Çalhanoğlu or the man he was brought in to replace, Christian Eriksen?
Mm, I'm sticking with Chala.
Çalhanoğlu or Dejan Stankovic, El Deki?
Yeah, I gotta give it to Stankovic here.
Whew, that's a shocker. I didn't know which way you were going to go with that one.
It was close, but yeah, I gotta give it to Stankovic.
When you win a triplete, it's hard to do anything better than that, right?
Yeah,
Stank
that's where I'm coming from.
Deki Stankovic or Henrik Mkhitaryan?
Stankovic.
Stankovic or Thiago Motta?
Stankovic.
Deki Stankovic or Nicola Barella?
Uh, After today's game, Stankovic. No, I'm kidding.
Ooh.
um, Sorry. No, like you said, treble winner. I gotta give it to Stankovic here.
Stankovic or Kuzmanovic?
Yeah, Stankovic.
All right. Deki, so Dejan Stankovic or Marcelo Brozovic?
Uh, yeah, I like Broza, but I gotta go Stankovic.
And the last one, Dejan Stankovic or Esteban Cambiasso?
I gotta go Cambiaso.
There you go.
Argentina's been good to us.
I was hoping you would go with Cambiasso to win it all. Because, I mean, for me, in my lifetime, we haven't had a better midfielder than Cambiasso. I think he's the most underrated midfielder Inter has had in my lifetime. He's so class. If we had him now, I mean, could you imagine? And then he went to Leicester. He did before the season they won, but he was instrumental in keeping them up. And then they won the league the next year. And then he went to Olympiacos and played well there. Before he was at Inter, he was great with Real Madrid. I mean, he just oozed class, and I was a really, really big fan of Cambiasso. He's one of my favorite Inter players of all time. So that was a pretty tough little lineup I have you there. So we're gonna end this with a question. The New Year's is coming up, and everyone likes to have a New Year's resolution. So if you're Christian Kivu, moving forward into the new year, what is your New Year's resolution for this Inter squad? What's the biggest thing you think for this Inter squad moving into the season to kind of push for this Scudetto?
Um, that's a good question. So the next month or so is going to be really important. The league's going to be it's going to be make or break in this January here. We've got a pretty tough run of games, including a home fixture against Napoli. Something we've seen, and I think maybe this will inform my answer a little bit here. I know as a group and as a fan base in general, we've talked about our inability for the past year or so to win those big games against direct rivals. You know, we've historically the past few years we've had Atalanta's number. They're a good team. I mean, this is a team that pretty impressively won the Europa League a couple years ago. Granted, it was a different coach. Um, it's always a little harder to play them in Bergamo. It's a good team, but what we haven't seen over the last year or two is we haven't seen our guys close out derbies. You know, Milan, they keep getting away with it. Juve, we keep letting them off the hook. Napoli, we've had problems with. Um, so I think what we need to see for the rest of this season is maybe we need to relax a little bit, focus, lock in, and when it comes to these big games, these big moments, don't let the moment get too big. Keep our cool, keep our heads about us, and deliver in those moments. Those are the games that I think we need to start bringing home because we've seen our rivals drop points against teams like Torino or Cremonese, teams that we don't seem to have any problem beating up on. And the fact that we can get those points, those gimme points, if we can start winning some harder games against the our chief competition for the title this year, then I think we're going to be really happy come May.
I agree. So your resolution, if you're Kivu, is to win a big match. What I'm gathering from here.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we need to show a little more composure in those big moments.
Yeah, I agree. And he has the opportunity to justify this resolution of yours on the 11th. Big match against Napoli at the Miazza. It's coming up not too far away, 2 weeks time. So hopefully that goes our way. Vince, we're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you coming on. This will not be the first time you come on. I'm sure of it. Hell, we might even have you on next weekend. It's been a pleasure. Do you have anything to say before we sign off here?
No, I think that'll be it for me. It's been a pleasure being here. Hopefully, I didn't ramble too much. Thanks again for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, man.
Yeah, guys, show Vince, the grandson of Sandro Mazzola, some love. He also, I don't know if you guys know this, and we'll have to get him on next time in full Darmian attire, but he also is the doppelganger of Matteo Darmian when he dresses to the nines like him. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And as always, Forza Inter.